We know questionnaires don't work. Why are we not getting rid of them?
We build mental models about things. It's how we do things and we process things, habits. We get very committed to them unknowingly, and bad habits, they're hard to break.
There's a whole industry around questionnaires. How do you disrupt an industry? A new tech comes in and it disrupts the old methodology. So we need to define that tag that will disrupt the questionnaires.
Innovation is not about incremental improvement of something that is broken. How do we get rid of the questionnaires altogether?
First, you have to destroy your mindset. It's about the questionnaires. Well, I ask people, why are you sending questionnaires out? Well, they're trying to collect information about controls. Well, okay, so it's the questionnaires that are the problem. It's not the data behind them.
If you think you need to blow your system up, we need to stop trying to incrementally improve something that's busted. Greetings and salutations, one and all. Welcome to today's freezing cold episode of Third Party. That's why I'm sitting here with my arms crossed. So today's going to be an interesting one, I think. You have a TP or CRM program. Does it need to be restarted? Does it need to be rebuilt? It's broken. It's based 100% on questionnaires. Do we need to rebuild from scratch? If so, how do we do that? If we don't need to rebuild? So let's kind of start there. Let's start off with something very simple. We know questionnaires don't work. Why are we not getting rid of them? And what should we be doing? Should we be building a program from scratch without them? Should we build around them? Are they still going to be the core? We've talked about this before. So what do you think, Bob? How, somebody comes to you and says, I inherited this program. I don't know if I should rebuild or restart.
Well, that's a difficult question because what I've found is that, humans, we build mental models about things, and then it's how we do things and we process things, habits. And we get very committed to them unknowingly, and bad habits, they're hard to break. And it's the same thing with a TPRM program. It's simply a model that you've developed and you've built and you're following it. And in order to change it, it's like breaking a bad habit. How do you do that? And there's a good essay that Air Force Colonel John Boyd wrote. For those of you that follow me or read anything that I've written, I talk a lot about the OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, and act. And one of the, actually it was his only published article, was the theory of creation and destruction. And that the concept is that those mental models, when they're stale, you have to literally destroy them, but not throw everything out. You just rethink. You have to go and look at, what works and what doesn't work. And I think that's the point that people have to get to be willing to do that. But it's almost impossible with the existing structure of TPRM programs today, because they're all based on compliance. They're based on what the regulators are telling them to do. So we're stuck in that loop where we're not changing anything. And we still send out 500 questionnaires that don't really bring any value. So
I feel like it's almost like when you have a car accident and the insurance company has to make a decision about whether to repair it or whether to junk it. They're making a purely financial decision, or maybe I have an emotional attachment to that vehicle.
Yep.
So it sounds like the decision driver isn't necessarily the right one, and we tend to fall in love with the things that we are familiar with.
Yeah, we really need to change this program, but we can't. We need to do something better, but we have to do it this way too.
Right.
Yeah, and they just can't get there.
So from your perspective, Ferhat, kind of feeding intelligence and information into programs, what would you see as some of the triggers for a decision about should we rebuild or should we fix?
More and more I listen about questionnaire and how it is embedded into TPRM programs. The more I convinced that questionnaire is a beast very difficult to unalive, because there's a whole industry around questionnaires, right? How do you disrupt an industry? Like if you look into the past, it's not, one or two companies, it's the whole tag. A new tag comes in and it, disrupts the old methodology. So we need to define that tag that will disrupt the questionnaire business. Continuous monitoring is, one candidate that might happen. Intelligence-led risk response might another candidate. AI is debatable. In one way, AI actually provided a life breath to questionnaires because it makes it easier to process the questionnaires. But on the other hand, I feel like the whole questionnaire part or compliance part of the equation will become mostly almost 90% automated by AI, so that the TPRM teams, they can focus on the real problems, not the questionnaire things. Right now, the questionnaire process taking so much time of them, they are focusing on questionnaires. But once it is gone, because of all the developments in AI, they can focus on the real problems. And it's going to be a slow process, maybe, or maybe it will be a very fast process, depending on how people pursue AI on questionnaire. But we will see that happens.
I feel like it's going to be slow and then fast.
Yes.
Right? Very slow to get there. And then once we get to that precipice, I think it's kind of off the cliff.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I think you're going to jump off the cliff, because I think that whole thought process is flawed, that we're going to use AI to speed up and improve a process that probably shouldn't even exist, that it's flawed to begin with. So, it's that mental model. Everybody is committed to third-party risk management. There's associations, there's experts, there's certifications, that all that would have to change in order to go through that creative, the destruction and recreation process. And the community's not willing to do that. So we've glommed onto the glamorous promise that AI is going to fix the questionnaires. And why fix something that it probably doesn't work to begin with?
You and I have had numerous conversations about the concept of innovation, right? Yeah. And I always say innovation is not about incremental improvement of something that is broken.
Yes.
Right? And I think that's sort of the mental block I think that a lot of people are running up against, which is, how do we make the questionnaire process better, when really the question should be, how do we get rid of the questionnaires altogether? And I think we've done some interesting things at Black Kite that I think have sort of moved in that direction, right? Where we can do these gap analysis, and we can, we don't need to ask you if you're encrypting your data, because we can see you are or you are not. We don't have to ask if you're patching, because we can see if you are or you are not. But I think that's really more of the incremental. I think we need to get people to, recognize that that whole approach is broken. And, I was used to ask CISOs, so you got a brand new job, if you could build your program from scratch, what would you do? Right? And I think those are the questions we need to ask. If you had your dream, and I'm actually going to ask you both this question, you're starting a program from scratch, what would you do and what wouldn't you do from scratch? And I think that's what people need to start to think about. I see people, talking about like investment all the time. You work for a company, you get a bunch of shares, and the question people always ask is, if you had that money, would you put it all into the shares of your company? And most people will say no, and yet that's your entire retirement portfolio, right? So it's really, how do you get people to sort of step out and comment from the outside in as opposed to being the inside out? So I'll start with you, Ferhat. If you stepped in, and I know you don't run the program, but you have access to this data and intelligence. If you were to build a program from scratch, and feel free to take that intelligence sort of focus, what would you do? What are 3 things you would say absolutely you would do, and then one thing you would say no?
Well, if it is from scratch, it's easier to answer, because if there's a program already in place which is questionnaire centric, and let's say that you are a very visionary CISO that you don't want to do questionnaires, it's very difficult to convince people to get away from questionnaire. Mm-hmm. But if you are building the program from scratch, the first thing that I want an intelligence-led approach. I want to get the intelligence. So how do I get the intelligence? I need the proper tools or intelligence provider for me. I need a team. If from a scratch, even like 2 people to start with, I need a team to run the program, and I need enough agentic approach to run with a small team. I want to run because I want to have the full visibility. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that I will, I will reach out all the vendors that I have. But the first thing that I need to do is to have the visibility of my third-party ecosystem, so that I can decide which ones that I need to assess, which ones I need to monitor, and so on and so forth. So those are the three things that I will start with.
Okay, and what is one thing you definitely would get rid of other than questionnaires? 'Cause
You're making it very difficult.
Yes.
It's not get rid of, but I will try to
Or change.
Automate as much as possible the compliance side. Like I want to make it very, very automated so that I don't have to deal with all these compliance questions coming from the customers and so on and so forth. So I will try to automate that side as much as possible, because I believe almost 99% of that process can be automated.
Okay, so let me sum it up. So visibility, automation, intelligence-based approach,
Yes.
right? And get rid of manual effort.
Yes.
Okay. Bob, 3 things you would do and 1 you would not.
So first,
Or 1 you would change, whatever.
first you have to destroy your mindset. Yeah, it's about the questionnaires. Well, I ask people, why are you sending questionnaires out? Well, they're trying to collect information about controls. Well, okay, so it's the questionnaires that are the problem. It's not the data behind them. And if you can change how you look at that, okay, what if I could build a program that I didn't need to send anybody a questionnaire ever again? And you can ask any black kite vendor, have I sent them a questionnaire? And the answer is no, we don't do it anymore. We actually did exactly what you are asking. It's doable. We've done it. It's very easy, but you have to understand, you need the data. How do you get that data? Well, where does it live? From a compliance perspective, it lives in documentation. If I can get your information security policies, people go, well, those are just documents. Well, there's more than that. If you send me a set of security policies and I see that in every year that you've reviewed your policies, you've made changes, and you have an ongoing governance of that tells me that they're more
As opposed to, oh, look at that password policy is 17 years old.
Yeah, or the policies say information security for insert your name here at the top. Yes, it happened to me. I was doing an assessment.
I've seen those.
But so what do you do? All that data in there. So those aren't testing of controls. It's not the data we talked about. You're talking about, but it is all the compliance. It is the reason people send questionnaires. Gotten rid of the reason for questionnaires. You don't need them. You get the documents. Now we start getting into the verification. Well, I get the certifications. Now I'm getting a little bit additional control testing from third parties that relate back to that. Not finally, the next step is there other control data that's independently tested? And you talked about that in another episode about the DNS records, those types of control records. If I can then have that into that process, and then the intel behind it, combining all that into a process, you get rid of questionnaires, you automate it, you make it easy, and you do it. The problem is that you have a company that you can't do that because you have a process you'd have to change. I had the luxury of being employee number 4 at Black Kite. I had the luxury there was nothing. I also had the luxury that I had the accessibility to a tool that could do all those things for me. So I was able to successfully build it from scratch to a point where questionnaires are, I don't think we have never. Well, maybe we did 4 or 5 years ago, but we don't send out questionnaires. It doesn't happen.
Okay. And then what is one thing you would change or not do?
What I would change is I'd retire. Wait. Okay, wait. No, that's.
All right, I think cut.
I've been doing this stuff a long time.
Cat, we're going to have to find someone else to replace Bob.
Yeah. Cat, you're in. No, I've been doing this stuff a long time. And, so for my world, my team, what we've built, we've built that to me, it is the classic example. It's based on all that. It includes cyber risk quantification that we don't look at high, mediums, and lows. We look at impact to business. We do all that. So, what I would change is I would change the world and have everybody do the same thing.
Okay, let me kind of sum that up. So I think you talked about automation. You also talked about, kind of, I'm going to paraphrase, meeting people where they are, right? What do you got?
Yep.
Send us what you got,
Yep.
right? And then financial quantification. So, okay, all right, awesome. So now I'm going to throw out a big, giant, hairy meatballs. This probably take us a little bit of time. Is it possible to outsource the entire program?
It depends on what your program is, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, assuming you want something better,
yeah.
right?
The reason
We
that I
stink at this, let's hire someone who doesn't stink at it.
Yeah, the reason that I ask that is we need to accept that there is a huge questionnaire centric perception of TPRM. So people start to think that managing questionnaire is the goal of TPRM.
Yeah.
It's not. It's the managing the risk, and we need to go back to that. So it is so much questionnaire centric that we are tracking how many questions get answered and so on and so forth. No, that's not your real concern.
You mean those aren't good metrics?
So if I, start to, if I am starting this program from scratch and, I'm putting these intelligence-led items and all the things that we discussed, if I have 2 people and an agentic structure, I can do it in-house. But if I don't have enough resources, enough budget, of course, I need to, outsource it. But especially these days, I don't believe outsourcing these type of things, especially if you want to do a risk-based, approach. There are, companies, they are providing TPRM services, but they cannot, do the vendor relationship that you want to do. I want to talk to my vendor. I want to create the relationship with my vendor. I don't want a third-party company which has a written script to talk to vendors. No, I don't want that. They don't know that company. Maybe it's a mom and pop shop, which might be a critical vendor to me. I want to build a relationship with them. I don't want to use a delegation for it.
Yeah, I mean, many years ago, I had an ongoing engagement with a CIO and his security team, and they were trying to figure out what they could outsource. And I built a really simple model, right? Strategic versus tactical value, and relationship intensive versus relationship agnostic. To me, TPRM is strategic and it is very relationship intensive, right? So to me, I think it would be very difficult to do that. I think the challenge, and it's a bit of a trick question that I'm going to go to you, Bob, is that I think what you can outsource is questionnaire management, but I think we can agree that's not what TPRM is. So what are your thoughts on outsourcing?
Sure, give Bob the trick questionnaire. I've tried it. So, when we had too many in a previous role, we had too many assessments to do. There was at one point, I forget I don't know if you remember, the thing was called the Panama Papers. It was a legal firm, and all of a sudden, we got to assess legal firms now, and how many legal firms do you have? And globally, like 800, which reduced down to, when you really looked at it, what was effective, maybe 150. But still, now we have to do another 150 assessments. So I looked at outsourcing that, and you have to find a framework. And I can guarantee you that they don't do it as good as people that are inside the company, is just my opinion, in my experience. I could be completely wrong. Outsourcers, they may hate me for that. But the way your program, you mentioned 2 people, an AI agent, and it would only be better if you had a dog with that too. So that would make it better. But yeah, I just don't think it's
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like, to your point, that we have to think about this as the strategic business enabler that it is, rather than as a technical discipline. And I think once you see it as a strategic business enabler, you can't really outsource it, right? I think there are some elements you can outsource, and I think to a certain extent, for programs that don't have serious needs, using a platform like Black Kite essentially is outsourcing it, right? Because you can use the platform for the whole thing. But I think that as programs get more mature, and I think there's more of a focus on the business impact, I think that becomes problematic. What about like mid-size enterprises, folks that maybe don't even have the 2 people that Ferhat talked about? Do you see that as potentially a candidate for outsourcing, maybe through MSSPs or MSPs or some other service provider?
Well, it depends on what, you talk about outsourcing. And again, I always hate to, no, I don't hate to use the word depends, but it does. It depends. What is it that they want somebody else to do? Is it, what's their need? How much of a TPRCRM program do they need? Are they just trying to meet it? Maybe they only need a compliance where they have to show, yes, we continuously monitor. That's easy to outsource. So, there are many things.
Well, what about things like collecting the documentation and following up? Oh, I never got that, right? So, building a workflow with escalation is not super easy, although it's gotten easier with some of the tools that are out there. But it seems to me that if I'm a mid-sized enterprise and I have 100 vendors, I don't really have the time to chase them. Hey, I sent the questionnaire, or I sent this, a request for documentation. If you're not getting back, would you see that as something that could be outsourced?
Well, again, you're right. You're going to right to depends. You're putting in a category that yes, there's a need. So there's not one easy answer of yes, it will always be good, or you should always do it, or you never do it. It does. It literally depends. You have to look at your own situation, and there are cases like that would be valuable. Larger enterprises obviously having in-house. It's if I am a big company and I'm spending millions of dollars with you, and I have a problem with you as my vendor, and I call you from my company, I have a little bit more influence, right, as opposed to, I'm with XYZ MSSP, and I'm calling on behalf of, So it's a complicated question, and you could do it any multiple ways like that.
And the other thing is that now some of the definitions becomes blurry. Like one is that software as a service, and the other one is labor as a service, or white collar as a service, whatever we want to call it. Professional services, right? So these are two distinct things that we could have separated from each other. But now they are overlapping too much, because now we have agent as a service, right? Now, when you said outsource, I've been always thinking about like a professional services and so on and so forth. But if you are talking about agent as a service, that's a different topic. There's different discussion.
This would be an interesting exercise, right? Go to your LLM of choice and say, I'm building a TPRM program from scratch. I do not want to use questionnaires. What should I do? I'd be interested to see what the LLMs would come back with.
Depends on their trainings.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of crap on the internet about how to build TPRM programs.
Yeah.
And it's going to pull from that. So it's going to.
But there's also some good stuff out there.
Yeah, but how does the LLM know that? What's good and what's bad? You've got to give it parameters. You just can't. I don't want anybody going out asking that simple question of an LLM. You've got to build.
Don't ask that question. Do not listen to me.
Build parameters. You define what your outcome needs to be.
The goal is very important.
And if you're defining the outcome, you're going to have a little bit maybe more of a success rate with it talking to you. Because if not, I know what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to ask it that question to see what kind of crazy answer
I'm
it is.
planning on doing
Because I'm sure it's going to be crazy, and it's probably going to be something in a book I've read or a course that I've taken that's
or some sort of platitude stuff like inventory your vendors. Okay,
Yes.
how do I do that?
Yes. Yeah, understand your ecosystem. What does that mean?
I think it's an interesting thing, and I think we've all really talked about the fact that we need to figure out a way to think differently and really blow up our own thought patterns.
Yes.
Because, we need to stop trying to incrementally improve something that's busted.
Yeah. Break our mental models and create something new.
All right, awesome. So we would love to hear from all of you out there. What are you doing? Do you think you need to blow your system up? Do you think you can improve what you have? And if you have an idea about how to get rid of questionnaires, we'd love to hear that. Black Kite gives you the visibility a modern TPCRM program needs from day one. Whether you're building, rebuilding, or refining, real data beats good intentions every time. Learn more at blackkite.com. blackkite.com. For the research roundup section of the show, we're going to talk about a survey there's a global TPRM survey from Deloitte from 3 years ago. And while normally we'd say, well, we wouldn't want to talk about data from 3 years ago, I think it's actually interesting to talk about this in particular. So they interviewed 1,300 respondents, 40 countries, blah, blah, blah. And what they found was that the more mature TPRM programs are moving away from administering questionnaires to more collaborative conversations. We've talked about both of those things extensively on the podcast. So, thoughts? I don't want to ask any questions. What are your thoughts on that?
I'd like to know who the 1,400 companies they talk to. Surveys like that, I know statistically you're supposed that's a good subset, but it doesn't really represent the whole world out there. And I've seen some companies moving away from questionnaires, truly, but I've also seen especially larger companies that have embedded processes, regulated
I
industries.
feel like you're buckling down.
Banking industries, that it's becoming more complex and there's more questions. So actually, I see it going the other way.
Right. Well, one of the things that we're seeing, right, people are taking their 300 question questionnaires and adding another 50 AI questions.
Yeah.
No, they add more than 50.
All right, I'm being conservative.
And in fact, I was going to say that this is like from December 2023, right? And now it's pre-LLMs.
Right.
Now there are so many AI assessments coming in the form of questionnaires.
Yeah.
So actually, maybe even those mature programs, they get back to questionnaires just because of the AI assessments.
Yeah.
There is no easy way to do AI assessments. Of course, there will
And
be
no
tools.
one knows what good looks like.
Exactly. And that, of course, there will be tools to collect information and provide you before asking the questions and so on and so forth. But right now, we don't know which company use which AI model, right? You can only get that answer by asking the question. Maybe you are not asking that question. What you are asking is that, hey, are you doing this and that in terms of governing your AI solutions? The AI governance is going to become the big thing in the GRC world. I don't know how it will impact the TPCRM, but there will be an impact on the TPCRM. And right now, the questionnaire is the main thing that people are using.
And I think it's wrong. If they really want to look at AI governance, if you're going to use a vendor and the use of their AI is critical to your operation, there's a thing you can ask for. It's, can I see your AI model card? If you're listening on here and you have no idea what that is, learn, because that's the future. A company that is a truly AI-centric company, they will have their AI model cards prepared, because AI governance dictates what's important and what goes in. It's essentially taking a questionnaire. Instead of me sending you 250 questions about your AI, give me your AI model card. If it's done according to governance the way it should be, all the data about those 250 questions is in the model card. Right. So I've solved the problem. But wait, that means then I have to understand the model card and I have to read it and I have to interpret it. Or I would rather just have you answer the questions and then I can give you a percentage score and then I know if you're doing right. Sarcastic mode off now. The model
that was
card.
sarcastic?
That was sarcastic, but that's what people do. But the model card, I think, is the critical thing, and ask for that. That's a simple thing.
So when you look into the success of SBOMs, do you think that these AI model cards will be successful?
Yes, absolutely, because every governance framework that is propagating regulations about AI, they're embedded. That is what they're doing.
Hopefully they're learning lessons from the challenges of SBOM.
Yeah.
Because we saw a big buzz, really largely triggered by SolarWinds. It was pushed by the U.S. federal government, and over the last number of years, they seem to have pulled back quite a bit on that. And I don't think it's a political thing. I think largely it's been a lobbying thing. The big software vendors don't want to have to do it, and it's hard. Yeah, of course it's hard. Anything good is hard.
But there's tools there to automate that. We have an internal tool that produces our SBOM. AI SBOM. Now we're taking that to the next level because
No,
there's
it's not AIS bomb, it's AI bomb.
AI bomb, AI, same thing.
Extraneous S's bomb.
But they're important, and having the ability to have visibility, because again, it's like a complicated ecosystem. Third parties, fourth parties, fifth parties. That S bomb or the AI bomb can identify that ecosystem of connected components inside your system.
Hopefully people are learning their lesson from the challenges and failures of SBOM with the AI stuff. I think we might be, just based on what I'm hearing from a lot of folks.
Yeah. So I remember
still-
somebody asking me for the S bomb, and I think the format's called Cyclone DX is what it goes
Yeah,
out
There's
in.
two.
Yeah.
two
And we
different-
send it out, right? And they go, "Oh, can you send me something I can read?" It's like, okay, wait, why were you asking for our S bomb? Because it's a compliance thing they have to do, and they get what they asked for, and they don't know how to interpret it.
Yeah, well, I mean, about 6 months ago or so, I had a conversation with a industry analyst, and she told me, she said, a lot of people are requesting S-bombs, but they don't really know what to do with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? They're requesting them because they're supposed to.
Yep.
So here, I think a takeaway for all of you out there listening, are you moving closer to questionnaires or are you moving farther away from questionnaires? And I think that will sort of trigger kind of what you need to do. If this episode helped you rethink your program, and it should have, do us a favor and leave us a quick rating on Spotify. It helps more risk leaders discover the show, keeps those conversations going, and makes me feel good about myself. Thanks for listening. So our next segment is agree to disagree. So I'm going to give my colleagues 3 statements, and then we're going to talk about them. All right, so there's some context for this one. If you are building a new program from scratch, should you do it with the same team you had, or should you be doing a forklift upgrade and bringing in a whole new team? Bob? If you say it depends, I am jumping out of my seat.
I am just going to get a little sign that says depends. So is the existing team, are they willing to break the mental model that they used to build their first program? If they are, and go through creation and destruction and create something new, take the valuable things they've done and build something new, absolutely use the new team. If they're not willing to do that, well, then it's time to move on.
Right?
Well, there's a folk story in Turkish culture. So 2 guys approach a wrestling coach and ask him to teach them wrestling. And the wrestling coach asks first guy, "Do you know anything about wrestling?" And he says, "No." Then it is like 100 liras for you. And asked the second guy, "Do you know wrestling?" And he said, "Yes, I know some." And he asked like 200 liras for you. And he asked like, "Why I'm paying more?" Because first I need to make you forget what you know, so that I
Break the
can
mental
teach.
model.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I do think, though, that sometimes with more technical people, they tend to be less flexible. And I think the leadership probably needs to do some re-education because, and I ran into this when I was managing a team a bunch of years ago. We had a cluster infrastructure, and my network engineer was a Novell NetWare guy, and he only looked at Novell NetWare solutions, and those did not work. And when we said, you got to look at Windows, he was like, I'm not doing that, right? So we fired him because he refused to be flexible and he refused to think differently.
Novell and isn't that a century-old technology?
Yeah, I'm not that young anymore, Bob. Yes. All right. Second thing, and we talked about this, outsource TPRM beats in-house TPRM at companies under a certain size, and that line is moving. So I think we've already talked about this, but I think here's the question. Is it moving down to smaller companies with the expectations of bigger, smaller companies doing it themselves? Or is it moving upstream so that bigger companies are going to start looking at outsourcing some or all of this? Farhat?
Well,
Yeah, you
it depends.
can't pass it off to me.
It
on the
Well,
depends.
I saw you looking over at
Yeah,
Bob.
I
going,
saw that too. I'm staying quiet until I hear what he says.
It depends on how you define outsourcing.
Depends. Wait a minute. You
TPRM.
give me a hard time when I use that. You just use my line.
But it's
Once.
not about the answer. It's about the definition.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Outsourcing TPRM meaning that you are outsourcing again. Like the boundaries are blurry right now about software as a service and the physical the personal professional services. And if you are talking about using agent as a service to outsource your TPRM program or partially outsource your TPRM program, yes, I think mid-sized companies or smaller companies will do that more, but large enterprises will still do that in-house as much as possible.
Yeah, I think the mistake will be if they outsource, and the agentics is absolutely it's the way to go, but without human in the loop. And where's the human in the loop? I'm going to have AI work my program, and my program should have some point. The key decisions should be made by a human in the loop. Is that somebody that is outsourced, or is it somebody that's in my company?
And the biggest challenge I've always seen with outsourcing is who's accountable for the decisions.
Yes.
And you can't really hold the outsourcer accountable.
Nope.
I mean, you can fire them, but then you're no better off than where you started.
Exactly.
All right, and then the final one, and I know we're all going to agree on this one, a modern TPCRM program is more like continuous monitoring than a review program. So I'm going to start with this one. And I think this really aligns with what we've been trying to get people to understand. It isn't about assess everybody and monitor somebody. It's about monitor everybody and then assess based on what your monitoring shows. So to me, any kind of effective risk management program needs to have continuous data fed into it, continuous decision-making, and
So the one question you're going to ask me that I'm not going to answer with depends, you don't ask me.
oh, I'm asking you. I just consider it asked.
Yes. Unequivocally, yes.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like if you have, when you say modern TPRM program, if it includes the continuous monitoring, which the statement, alludes to that, yes, like you need the continuous monitoring for all the vendors, but you don't need assessment for all the vendors at some point.
And I mean, I'll share. So this is, they're actually a customer of ours now, but a friend of mine was running GRC for an insurance company. And he said, look, I'm onboarding 100 vendors a month. I'm doing full assessments on all of them, only to realize really only 3 of them were risky for me.
Yeah.
So he implemented the tool and realized that they only needed to do full assessments on 3, 4, maybe 5 vendors a month. So now what are they doing? They're onboarding more quickly, which is a big business benefit. They are more aligned with business environment and business risk, which is what we want. And they're spending less money. And now they can spend 80% of their time on those 5 or 6 riskiest vendors as opposed to spreading it across. So, all right. Awesome. I love this. I know sometimes we agree. I still think it's interesting conversations, though. Next episode, we're going to get into cascading and concentration risk. The vendors you depend on and the vendors they depend on. And what happens when that same provider goes down across half your ecosystem all at once? Remember, cybersecurity doesn't thrive in the shadows. It demands daylight. Until next time.